Hi, my name's Robert Hammond. This is a fourth video I'm doing on Julian Huxley and his book Essays in Popular Science, and I'm connecting it to Aldous Huxley's brother's book A Brave New World. Basically I'm talking about how it was and is being applied now, and it's a reality. So I'm not going to go on too much. If you haven't seen the other videos, I suggest you do. But I'm going to carry on anyway from where we left off. We were talking about the dominant sex, and we were talking about how Huxley was bringing up the point or the argument. You know, are the difference between the genders, how children or how we grow up to see the different roles of society within men and women, is it a biological thing, or are we raised, you know, like they say children are, we're programmable, aren't we? They say when we're children we're educated, or our parents raise us to certain values and we grow up and we continue those values. So, you know, is it social, is it traditional, more so than what he calls hereditary, is, you know, and you think he has a point, you know. But I mentioned feminism because he was talking about the equality of the sexes. You know, the suppression of either sex is bad, and no, it has a point there. But I think there's a sinister side to that. He's looking to blur the lines of the sexes because, well, put it this way: if you look in A Brave New World, people don't have children naturally. They don't have sex to have children. It's basically a case of reproduction without sex and sex without reproduction. Therefore, there's no family unit, which, if you look at it, is like a small tribe, isn't it? When you think of it. So there's the natural roles. And I think they're natural. They don't exist anymore. They've been destroyed. So that's why it makes sense to kind of blur the genders there. And if you look at animals, I mean, this is my argument. I think that the roles of man and women are a biological thing. Maybe not solely, but I mean there is a biological drive there. If you look at primates, for example, the way that the male and females act, there's a social role here, and I think it's determined biologically. Hormones play into this. The sex hormones, they influence our psychology, and they influence the psychology of the primates. And apparently, we're mammals, so that's worth noting. So the blurring of the sexes is something that is interesting. And another thing I'm going to mention as briefly as I can is if you're going to break up the family unit, if it is a biological thing, you're going to, in a way, you want to neuter your subjects, because I'm thinking mainly on, for example, on the male, the men, you know, and the alpha male kind of thing here, because they say, you know, if you look at the primates, they're territorial, they have families, and they have a clan, and basically, you know, those people become, or those animals become very personal to one another. And any other clan coming in, there can be a territorial, there can be fighting. So if you look at that and apply it to people, we've been like that. We're hunter-gatherers, I believe, naturally. We like familiarity. We like, you know, to be in our own little clans, our own little units. And then if you look at a country, it's almost like a big clan. It's like an expanded tribe, and this is where you get patriotism. People begin being patriotic about their countries. And then if you look at football, and I don't mean to be disrespectful, but if you look at that, I believe that's a way of getting the men to expend a lot of that testosterone and that energy that comes with being a male in these situations. I mean, the Romans did it in the Colosseums. It's tribalism, I feel. England versus Germany or whatever. When you say England versus Germany, maybe some of them are still thinking about the war and everything. And if you think about it, that takes a lot of effort on behalf of the controllers to build all of these stadiums and modern Colosseums and have people, pack those people in those seats and have it all on TV and basically entertain the children. It takes a lot of money and takes a lot of effort, and I think they see the differences in the genders as a drag. All this pent-up testosterone, what a drag. I mean, and there's always a case of rebellion and uprising, I think, the Romans knew that, the Roman rulers. You've got to keep the masses occupied with plenty of bread and circus because they can always uprise. And then if you look at the female side of it, you've got the soap operas. I mean, Alan Watts spoke of that, as well as the football, all these soap operas and these dramas that these women are into, and women, mainly watch, from what I am aware of, and basically they mimic that, they copy that, and they're often very negative, and you often see families arguing, so there's intentions there to possibly break the family unit up, I believe, and blur the genders. So moving on, we have here a section, Biology in Utopia. And here he brings in H.G. Wells, the fictional writer, who was also connected to the Huxleys and others. And here we have, reading here, Mr. Wells has attempted a genuine or idealistic utopia after the example of Plato, and Plato spoke about the utopia, possible future utopia coming. And it says here, his romance has become a fit subject for biological discussion in these pages. His picture of a world where, in the first place, the advance of physiochemical science, right, and its application, to which we are already accustomed, has attained a far higher pitch of perfection. Further, machinery has become so self-regulating that it does not make man captive, as Samuel Butler prophesied, but is a real servant. Also, instead of machinery and mechanism occupying the foremost place in the life of the majority of men, as Burke's and laments, my reading is not that good, that they are tending to do today, they have apparently been rendered not only more efficient, but more self-regulating, and are as subservient to the will of the community as is a motor car, which never gets out of order to its owner. In a brave new world, everyone loves their servitude. They don't get out of order to their owners, and that's this future utopia that Aldous Huxley was preaching about. Everybody's happy. People love their servitude, and if you take away their ability to think, if you tamper with their hormones, you can get a happy worker that would like, a life that free people, hot-blooded people would basically reject. So reading on. In the second place, life has been subjected to a similar control. This is a process which the biological sees so obviously on its way that it should excite no surprise. This is a process which the biologist sees so obviously on its way that it should excite no surprise. So he's saying this is, coming. This is, I think, Huxley commenting on H.G. Wells' Utopia. As our knowledge of genetics increases, our application of it must outstrip the past achievements of empirical breeding as much as the application of scientific knowledge of principle in chemistry, say, or electricity. Right. Moving on a bit. Even his domestic-minded leopards and tigers, more schemish and mild. He's talking about the animals in a future utopia. Maybe they're even kind of genetically engineered or something. He says here, all of this is but an extension of what has already begun. So Huxley's talking, this has already begun. In the third place, however, human as well as non-human life has been subjected to this control. But we may here direct attention to one idea which is imagined as the root of much of it, the idea that man is master in his own house of earth, as opposed to the idea which, with few exceptions, has until now dominated his history, the idea that he is the slave, sport or servant of an arbitrary personal power or powers. Finally, we come to the most radical and inevitably the most provocative of authors' imaginings, that which concerns not the alteration of things in relation to a constant human nature, but the alteration of that human nature itself. Here Mr. Wells is extremely interesting. He reduces the role of eugenics to a minimum, exalts that of education, or if you prefer environment, to a maximum. Now, education and environment, that's an interesting one. I believe reading this book, Essays in Popular Science, they were talking about how intelligence is influenced by environment, basically. DNA biology is so adaptive, and it's basically... our biology was forced to adapt to the environment in the past, the hostile environment, and that's how we've changed. We're very pliable, and so they're thinking, by changing the environment, hence a Brave New World environment, we'll adapt to it. I guess that's one of the explanations to this. Anyway, I'm going to cut that short again and talk to you in part 5.